Success can become a professional athlete's most suffocating enemy when he finds himself trapped inside the deepest organizational roster in world baseball. The Los Angeles Dodgers have run out of storage space for their own talent, and Andrew Friedman is preparing to run the blade to the roster with the clinical detachment of a surgeon who feels no personal attachment to the tissue being removed. The target this time is Ryan Ward, a man who executed every single assignment given to him at the AAA level, claimed the MVP award that a production deserved, launched 36 home runs against the best minor league pitching available, and now discovers that in Hollywood's organizational ecosystem, elite performance isn't always sufficient currency to purchase a major league roster spot. Kyle Tucker's record-breaking contract arrival, combined with Teoscar Hernandez, continued presence slammed the outfield door directly in Ward's face before he could reach the handle. First base? A gentleman named Freddie Freeman occupies that position with the permanence of a structural wall. The Dodgers are treating Ryan Ward the way a successful executive treats a luxury vehicle he genuinely loves, but simply cannot park anywhere in the building. It's an exceptional asset creating a logistical problem that sentimentality cannot solve. The March plan emerging from Hollywood's front office is transparent in its direction. Sell the car before the calendar depreciation compounds. Today, we're dissecting every dimension of this corporate disposal operation. We'll examine why the Dodgers are using spring training to repackage Ward across multiple defensive positions, how the market's swift justice can transform this organizational cast-off into a genuine competitive trump card for a franchise willing to provide him consistent playing time, and what it truly means to be simultaneously too good for the minor leagues and too expensive for Hollywood's bench inventory. Before Ward's production numbers from last season hit your screen in their full absurdity, you assume command of the front office right now. Opening day is approaching with the urgency of an oncoming freight train. Do you hold Ryan Ward as a bench insurance policy activated only when injuries create the vacancy his talent deserves? Or do you replicate the Michael Busch blueprint exactly, trading him immediately for 2 or 3 elite prospects that guarantee the franchise's organizational future extends beyond the current championship window? Think of the casino owner's cold mathematics. Because an overcrowded table doesn't allow the game to flow regardless of how talented the players seated around it happen to be. Let's survey the tactical disposal bin where this billion-dollar roster's overflow currently accumulates. The Dodgers already invested the organizational capital required to protect Ward to the Rule 5 draft, a decision that demonstrated genuine belief in his developmental trajectory and future major league contribution. That protection represented a deliberate choice to maintain his organizational status against the competitive market that would have claimed him without hesitation given his production numbers. The front office made that commitment when the roster mathematics suggested a path forward for his development. The mathematics shifted. James Tibbs III is pushing through the developmental pipeline with the urgency of a prospect whose tools generate the evaluative language that organizations reserve for legitimate future contributors rather than organizational depth. Zach Ehrhard is applying his own pressure from the same direction. The oxygen available for Ward's continued development inside the Dodger Stadium ecosystem has been consumed by the organizational decisions that followed his Rule 5 protection, and the front office is now managing the specific contradiction of having protected an asset they can no longer deploy effectively. 36 home runs at the AAA level isn't a number that arrives through statistical noise or schedule manipulation against inferior competition. That production reflects genuine power capacity operating at its current developmental ceiling, a hitter whose mechanical approach generates consistent hard contact against pitching that one step removed from major league quality. The award voters who selected him as AAA's most valuable player weren't rewarding potential or projecting future performance. They were acknowledging demonstrated present production that exceeded every competitor at that competitive level during that specific season. The organizational irony embedded in Ward's situation carries a specific flavor of institutional contradiction that only the deepest roster constructions generate. The Dodgers development system produced exactly the outcome it was designed to achieve: a minor league player who maximized his tools, elevated his performance to award-winning levels, and established himself as a legitimate major league contributor ready for consistent deployment. The system worked perfectly. The problem isn't developmental failure. It's developmental success colliding with a major league roster that has simultaneously acquired so much premium talent through financial resources that no vacancy exists to absorb the player of the system prepared for exactly this moment. This is where baseball's swift justice delivers its verdict on organizational accumulation without architectural planning. The karma isn't punishment in traditional sense. It's the specific inefficiency of having invested years of development resources into preparing a player for major league contribution while simultaneously eliminating every deployment pathway through premium free agent acquisitions. Ward's situation reveals a hidden cost of super team construction that roster analysts rarely discuss publicly. Every marquee signing that fills a position with established talent simultaneously buries a developmental asset that the organization spent years preparing to occupy that exact role. The Michael Busch comparison that organizational observers are invoking carries legitimate analytical weight because the structural parallel is nearly exact. Busch produced at levels that justified major league opportunity, found every pathway to consistent playing time blocked by the established talent surrounding him, and was ultimately converted through trade into prospect capital that addressed different organizational needs while providing Busch the consistent deployment his development required. The Chicago Cubs acquired a prepared hitter who immediately contributed at the major league level because he arrived with the competitive seasoning that AAA MVP production represents. The Dodgers acquired return value that addressed identified organizational gaps. Ward's trade market value reflects the specific combination of factors that makes reclamation projects and developmental assets attractive to organizations operating with different roster constraints than Los Angeles. He arrives in any trade conversation with documented power production at the highest minor league level, positional flexibility that Friedman's staff is actively expanding through spring training exposure to multiple defensive alignments, cost control contractual status that keeps salary commitment minimal for the acquiring organization, and a developmental completeness of a player who has already maximized the minor league curriculum. These characteristics describe an asset that addresses genuine needs for organizations whose rosters have vacancies that Ward's profile fills immediately. The spring training positioning work the Dodgers are conducting with Ward across multiple defensive alignments serves a dual organizational purpose that deserves recognition. It genuinely expands his deployment flexibility in the unlikely scenario that the roster mathematics create an unexpected opening for his contribution. But more practically, it increases his trade market appeal by widening the positional categories that potential acquiring organizations can evaluate him against. A left-handed power hitter capable of covering outfield positions while providing first base depth attracts a broader field of interested suitors than a player locked into a single positional profile, and broader interest translates directly into improved return value when the trade conversations reach serious territory. The prospect return award trade generates for Los Angeles depends entirely on which organizational desperation gradient the front office identifies and targets during negotiations. Teams with outfield vacancies and limited internal solutions will value his demonstrated production most aggressively. Organizations in active competitive windows requiring immediate offensive reinforcement without the developmental patience a prospect demands will accept the trade terms that rebuild Los Angeles' pipeline most effectively. Finding the intersection of organizational need, timing urgency, and prospect capital availability determines whether this transaction resembles the Busch return or falls short of that established benchmark. The casino table analogy holds with analytical precision when applied to the specific roster situation. The Dodgers currently seat more qualified players than the game's rules allow to play simultaneously, and the mathematical consequence of that overcrowding is that talented contributors sit idle while the operational efficiency of the entire enterprise suffers. A casino owner who understands the mathematics of his operation doesn't allow profitable tables to sit underutilized because the room is overcrowded. He opens additional capacity or redistributes the players to tables where their participation generates optimal return. Friedman's version of opening additional capacity is converting Ward's organizational value into assets that address genuine needs rather than allowing that value to depreciate through continued bench assignment. The operating table is prepared, and this roster surplus just landed in your hands with the opening day clock running. Staring at a player who maximized every developmental assignment while the major league roster simultaneously closed every viable deployment pathway. Do you hold Ward as emergency insurance, accepting the organizational inefficiency of his bench assignment, while hoping injury creates the opportunity his production warrants? Or do you execute the trade immediately, replicate the Bush blueprint, and convert this developmental success story into the prospect capital that sustains organizational competitiveness beyond the current championship window? Bring your most unfiltered verdict into the comments without softening the analytical edges. The Dodgers built this organizational depth through years of development investment and financial commitment. And the specific problem of having too much talent in too little roster space is the most expensive version of a problem any franchise can face. Ryan Ward deserves consistent major league opportunity. The honest question is whether Los Angeles is the organization capable of providing it, or whether his career requires a trade that converts organizational surplus into mutual competitive benefit for both franchises involved in the transaction.